Hi, YouTube fans. This is Matt of Post April 6th YouTube channel. Now we're going to do part 6. Yep, part 6. And did you enjoy the shirt that I got? Look at this baby. Wow. I got this on Temu at a very, very reasonable price. Okay. Part 6 it starts with February 22nd, 2020. On this day, I got my taxes filed with a local branch of H&R Block that also got me a tax refund advance on the Emerald MasterCard that they granted to me. And I sure needed the money. I really did, because I was still on sick leave from King Soopers because of my sprained knee. Yeah. March 3rd, 2020. I had my 4th or 5th visit with Select Physical Therapy to help heal my sprained knee, because Select Physical Therapy and Dr. Schwabach and Dr. Miranda are 3 different organizations. March 29th, 2020. Here's a really neat day. I mean, a really neat day. I returned to work after being on sick leave for 75 days, and I worked at least 5 hours that day. And here was the other significance about returning to work. There was some personnel changes. A guy named Sean became a front-end cashier, and there was another guy. Gosh, I forget his name, but he was an he was a existing school teacher, but he couldn't find the school teaching job that he wanted, so he just worked as a courtesy clerk, just to help pay the bills and help pay the rent, and have a house to live in, all that stuff. Okay, April 23rd, 2020, I got my $1,200 stimulus check from the U.S. Department of Treasury. The money was needed to pay over $900 worth of bills that I had to pay. April 29th, 2020, I got a refurbished Dell Latitude laptop CPU because the HP laptop was showing signs it was really getting worn out, and it was going to die on me. At On-Site Consulting Computer Store, adjacent to the grocery store I worked at in South Monaco and East Hampton. The HP ProBook was traded in as part of the deal. I got a $25 trade-in credit, and replacing the HP laptop as something I had to do. Therefore, I got the Dell Latitude laptop. This day that I'm about to talk about is not only a defining moment. It's another big turning point in my life, or the start of it anyway. I searched for 12 different mortgage lenders located near Huntington, West Virginia, and I could not find one to deal with that I felt I could trust. So I logged into Realtor.com via my Dell laptop and proceeded to get pre-qualified for a mortgage loan on a home on 4th Avenue, and it was a home that was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit selling for $49,900 approximate listing price. And I did the qualification with Rocket Mortgage, and when I was 40% done, I called the toll-free phone number, and a manager answered the phone call, and he did a lot to help me out and go the extra mile. to work things out so I could qualify. Then he transferred the call to a designated mortgage broker, and that man did a lot to help me out as well. Eventually, he had to end the call so he could help another client, and I got out of my pajamas and proceeded to take a shower. Well, when I was 2/3 of the way done, my Motorola G7 smartphone rang. I rushed out of the bathtub and tried to get the call. I answered the call a second too late. So I returned to taking a shower, and then after I dried off, wiped up a puddle of water on the floor, I shaved, brushed my teeth, and put some deodorant on my underarms. Well, after I got dressed, I called the guy back named Mac, and therefore, meaning return the phone call, and went over some important things. Then, after the call was completed, I packaged up some items I sold on eBay, and then I left the house and cautiously entered the post office. July 15, 2020. 2 days after my 47th birthday, I scanned all types of documents I needed to include into several attachments in several different emails, like at least 3, that needed to be brought to the attention of Rocket Mortgage. That completion was to my benefit. July 20th, 2020. I had a meeting with my attorney located in old downtown Littleton so he could submit a claim to Farmers Insurance and other issues we needed to discuss. July 26, 2020. I took a pricey Uber ride to Golden, Colorado, because the distance between my apartment and Golden is easily 15 miles, probably more than that. That was my first visit to that great mountainous town in over 10 years. I had a wonderful time. After hanging out on the West 12th Avenue, I toured Golden for about 2 hours. Then I got home on 3 different RTD rides, because how it worked was first I got on the 16L, and then I took the 16L until I got to the W light rail station. And I took the W until I got to a key turning point, and I got either on the C or the D, and I took the C or the D until I got to Alameda Station. And then what I did was I waited at least 10 to 15 minutes for the H. And then I took the H all the way to Dayton Station. And the distance between Dayton Station and the apartment I lived at on East Girard was probably a distance of a little more than a mile. So it took at least an hour and 55 minutes to get this done, to get from A to B. But I got it done, and I was happy that I made it home. September 11th, Patriot Day. I met with my lawyer as I was awaiting breakfast at my New York Daily News. I signed the settlement offer so I could get the money. And later on that day, after a shift at King Soopers, I had a Motorola smartphone break off of my belt-looped phone case. And I had spent over $96 at a local chapter of Metro PCS as a upgrade sale so I could have a smartphone to work with. What a crazy, happy, but strange day. Yeah, the cell phone that I got was an LG Aristo or Artisto. And I kept that until I did that thing where you put in this little maze as sort of a password. And when I couldn't crack that, I upgraded my phone. I was said, that does it. Forget it. Okay. On September 21st, I got the settlement check surrendered to me. You know, this was a situation where I wake up, and then after I wake up, I get a voicemail message from my attorney, and then I called him back and I said, okay, give me about a little more than an hour to shower and shave and make breakfast. And then after I did that, and I said, okay, go ahead and set up the Uber ride. And the Uber driver was one of these Middle Eastern guys. He was nice, but he didn't understand. A woman named Jennifer, who worked for my lawyer, was the one who set up the ride to come pick me up. He should have understood that. Oh well. It was all good and well, because right after I got the check, he set up an Uber ride to get back to my apartment, and then I deposited the check, and so on and on. September 27th, 2020, I arrived at Huntington, West Virginia airport. And it was the first time in my life that I'd been to that part of the United States. Oh goodness, I skipped a day. No, wait a minute, I did not, never mind. September 28th, a great realtor named Hugh drove me around Huntington and into Proctorville, Ohio, because the distance between Proctorville, Ohio and Huntington is only about 9 to 10 miles. It's not that far. 11 miles at the most. We looked at over 10 different properties. One in Proctorville and the other 9 were in Huntington. The very first property I looked at was the one I liked immediately, but I thought, no, I better keep looking and looking and looking. I don't want to, I don't want to give up just yet. September 29th, my last day of looking at houses, I had a meeting with, and this is a different Janet than one I've mentioned before, a lady named Janet at the Kroger store. She was human resources. And her and I talked for a few minutes, and I might have handed her a resume. If not, I sent her one in the mail a few days later. In fact, come to think of it, I think that's what I actually did. September 30th, 2020, I returned back to Denver, landing at Denver International Airport, DIA. October 6, 2020, a few days after an offer on the home I then lived in, or wound up living in. The offer was accepted, and I was duly notified by my realtor. Then I began doing all the important things of moving to a different part of the United States. October 14th, 2020, I gave my 60-day notice to vacate Gramercy Apartment Homes. My days of being a Denverite would be coming to an end. Now here's the day where I get the new phone that's a real diamond. I purchased a new iPhone SE 2020. I owned the phone outright and paid over $400 for a new phone at Metro PCS store. November 17th, 2020, I was sent home because I had a slight sore throat, and the King Soopers general manager demanded I have a COVID test before I could return to work. After I had the COVID test that was performed later on that day, and the results meant I tested negative. November 26, 2020. I worked on Thanksgiving Day, and after a 5 to 6 hour shift, after I got home, I ordered a Thanksgiving meal from Denny's restaurant, and it was delivered to me by Postmates delivery. December 4th, 2020 was my last day of working at the grocery store. I had a lot of cleaning and packing and getting rid of a lot of things I wished not to take with me. Now here's a day where I'm a busy man every day. December 5th through the 13th, I did lots of packing up of boxes, and after I shipped over 20 boxes of various sizes and various postal/UPS rates of shipping, I did quite a lot to move. I spent over $900 in postage. Yes. December 14th, 2020. Here's a day that I'll never forget as long as I live. I flew away from Denver, Colorado after I got to DIA. My flight was booked on the wrong date. I had to pay a $90 rescheduling fee and did it just in the nick of time. After I arrived at the boarding dock, I was informed by American Airlines the airplane was running late. That tardiness caused me to be late for a AA Piedmont Airlines flight from Charlotte, North Carolina Douglas Airport to Charleston Yeager Airport in Charleston, West Virginia. So I had to remain in North Carolina until 8:55 the next day. Thank God I got a voucher and stayed at a Hilton hotel free of charge. And here's another significant thing that happened once I got there. Or actually, it was more than one. First, I get a call from a guy who I don't talk to anymore because he's losing it. I mean, he don't got Alzheimer's, but he's getting strange. He's getting really strange. When he called and asked how things were going, and I told him what had happened about the delay, he misunderstood it, and I had to re-explain it to him at least twice. Oh, good Lord. And then after the conversation ended, I had to call my realtor and tell him, and he was sympathetic. And then after I called my realtor, I called my dad, and he understood and wished me the best of luck. And then what I did was I did a Google search through the browser as to the nearest Walgreens. And I called the Walgreens and asked and talked to the pharmacist. And the pharmacist said, okay, that's fine. The only thing we can get for you is this and this as an emergency refill. So then what I did was I got an Uber ride from the hotel to Walgreens. It's about a distance of at least 3 to 4 miles. And while I waited easily 15 minutes for a ride back to the hotel, I seriously was considering going into the Waffle House. I was waiting, not literally right out in front of, but near right out in front of. Near the front of the store. Out in the street in the area where a pedestrian could be, as long as he is pulled back far enough from the road. I think it was sort of like a sidewalk, sort of. Okay. Anyways, once I got back to the hotel, I used my, I called it Chili's, and the Chili's was a little vague about what they could do. So then what I did is I used my Pizza Hut app, and I ordered a really delicious grilled sandwich and some, I think it was either cheese, like mozzarella sticks or something, with it. And I also watched a movie, or no, one of the short movies of the Three Stooges. And I was really giggling. I was really having a ball. Okay, to the next day. I arrived at my new home in Huntington, West Virginia after a 35-mile ride from Charleston Airport to where I lived. And here's what happens. As soon as I get there, the keys that were in this old-fashioned, instead of a mailbox that was angled like this, it leaned up against the wall like this. I think it's what's called a narrow upright. The wrong keys were in the mailbox, so I had to call my realtor, and I told him, I said, okay, I'll go get the right keys. It's going to be about 10 to 15 minutes. I have to do a drop off somewhere, but I'll take care of it. I'll be there as soon as I can. He comes 15 minutes later. I try the keys. They fit. He takes out a form that he has me initial and sign, and he says, all right, good luck. You're now a West Virginian. And what I did is there were several boxes stacked up real neatly out in front, in the front lawn. And I brought them in one by one after I brought in my luggage. And I ordered lunch. It was Bob Evans' food, because that was the only thing I could do. I didn't have a refrigerator in there. I had no choice. And then what I did was I bought several things at Walmart, and I activated my television to, with the antennas so that it would pick up the local channels nearby, and it was a long process, believe me. And the next day, I went to an Aaron Brothers, and I got set up with a oven range and a refrigerator that were delivered a few days later. Until then, I had food delivered to me, or I went to go get it and eat it at the restaurant. Okay. Christmas Eve, December 24, 2020. I did several loads of laundry at Cookie Carnival Laundromat. Yeah, because that place used to be a bakery, but they converted it into a laundromat. They should have changed the name from something besides Cookie Carnival, but oh well, what can you do? But I had to wait a long time to achieve an Uber ride to the laundromat. But after the clothes were washed and dried, I could not get an Uber or a Lyft ride back home after working over 30 minutes trying to get one. So I had to walk 2.9 miles carrying a laundry bag that's bigger than this. And it's about, I was holding it like this. And when that thing weighed at least 6 pounds. I mean, that's really going to do a number on you. And I walked 2.9 to 3.1 miles home. Listening to Google Maps to get to go, turn here, turn there, so on and on. And as soon as I got home, I really collapsed. I was tired. January 1st to January 26th, 2021. I got a large sum of money back from Gramercy Apartment Homes after having to give them a large deposit 4 years before. I used I'll just come right out and say it, $2,800 I was refunded to buy many important things. I also applied for an EBT SNAP food and West Virginia state supplemented benefits to pay for Medicare A and B, or something aside from Medicare A and B, a supplemented program I was involved with. It was with Aetna. February 11th, 2021. This really made me feel a heavy, heavy, heavy case of the blues. I was without electricity, and I kid you not, for at least 12 hours. That day was a really miserable day for me. February 13th through the 24th, 2021. I did not have much money to spend at all. It was a bad case of the blues, which is true. I even had the nerve to ask for a voucher from Cabell Huntington Hospital in the amount of a $5 voucher to eat something after I had my EEG test. Thankfully, the voucher was granted to me. March 1st, 2021. I got a payout from eBay, and I had money to get groceries. I had to do the following. First, I had to walk 2.5 miles, I kid you not, that far, to Kroger Store 782. Then, after the grocery shopping was done, I paid the cashier $50.99 through my debit card. And then after that was completed, I waited and got a Lyft ride home costing $10.99 because I believe I granted a tip. March 4th, 2021. Whew! I got my EBT SNAP food card in the mail. And after I proceeded to activate it and take a little personal snapshot of it, I walked 0.98 to 1.3 miles to the closest Family Dollar store and bought some groceries I needed. Well, that's it for part 6. Thank you everyone for listening to this vlog, and part 7 is next, and part 7 is where things really get cooking. Thank you everybody. Thanks a lot, and goodbye now.